guys, I hope you're all doing well. So I thought I would talk about my days here in London. I usually make videos like a day in Rye, a day in Canterbury, a day in like on the seaside, but I've actually been in London for like I've spent more than like a day here. I've spent multiple days here kind of exploring the city. I think I've probably been in London for about a month, like interspersed at different places. I was in Rumford. I haven't been like directly in London. I haven't been in like stayed in London. Right now I'm in Hayes and Harlington, which is about 20 minutes from Paddington Station, which is next to the Kensington Palace. Before that, I was in Bromley South, which is about half an hour from Victoria Station, so half an hour from like Buckingham Palace, I think. And then before that, I was in Rumford for like 10 days, and that is about like 40 minutes from the center of London. So I've like had all these different times when I've gone and I've explored London. And like technically this is a borough of London, Hayes and Harlington, where I am right now. Heathrow Airport is like right behind the camera is Heathrow Airport. I could see planes coming in and going out all day. There's like the canals. The train station is literally like right there, like I'm one stop away from Heathrow Airport. If I was flying out of Heathrow Airport, this would have been so convenient, but I'm not. So I thought I would talk about my time here in London. So I've always like seen London in the movies and on TV shows, and it's kind of like this place that's it's like a magical palace with, not a magical palace, but it's like a magical place within your mind. When you think about London, you think about, oh, Big Ben, the London Eye, Sherlock, you think about Doctor Who. And I was like thinking about all of those things when it came to London. So since I've been here, I've kind of usually like take a day and do a bunch of things at once, because it is kind of expensive to travel from like the boroughs into the center of London. But I'm also just like, you're this close to London, you should just go and not think about like how much it costs. But like those things do come into your mind once you do it. I think it's probably like £15 to get to London and back from where I am right now, like the center of London, and that's quite expensive. That's probably like $25, which is kind of a lot for a 15-minute train ride. When I was staying in Rumford, if you saw earlier videos, you know I didn't go into the center of London. I stayed mostly in Rumford and did shopping and kind of relaxed, because it was pretty far away there in Rumford and it would be kind of difficult to get into the city. So I was like, okay, I'm gonna be in London at these later dates. I can wait and do things then. And I was able to go to Buckingham Palace. I think this was about last week when I was in Bromley South. And that day I walked over 10 miles because I'm like, I don't need to take public transportation. I could just walk and see things as I go, which is not the best thing to do in London. Like I said, I walked 10 miles. I probably would have saved so much time just hopping on a bus or the metro. But I'm like, I want to see the things in between. And I just put my headphones in and I had a nice time walking around London. It didn't feel like 10 miles, but by the end of the day, I was like, okay, we need to go sit down somewhere. So I took the train from Bromley South into Victoria and I walked to Buckingham Palace. And I got there just in time to see the guards change, which there's so many people in London right now. I don't know if it's just because people are traveling again, or there's always people going to these tourist sites. But I got there as soon as they were doing the guard change. So there was so many people walking around, and it was just kind of claustrophobic, but I got to see the guards change. And then from there, I got to go to see the palace, see the guard change. And then I think it is James Park. Let me see. Yeah, St. James Park. Huh. Good. I went to St. James Park, and the whole time I was in Bromley South, it had not rained once. Tell me the one time I actually go into London and I have to be walking around, it starts raining. And this is when I had my hair was dyed pink, so I was so worried that it was going to like melt all over me and I was just gonna be like this giant pink stain walking around London. But I got to see St. James Park, got to see the city of Westminster, lots of people. I got to see the London Eye. I didn't go on it, which is probably not helped that right now I'm on the 8th floor of this building. But I saw the London Eye. I'm like, okay, that's cool, but we're not doing that. I'm not getting something on something tall today. And then I got to see Big Ben, which was under construction. And when I called and talked to my dad about like my day in London, he's like, it was under construction when I was there, when he was like 12 years old, which I thought was hilarious that it's still under construction, or it's continuously under construction. And then after that, I stopped at Starbucks and I got a holiday drink. There's so many different like coffee shops here in London and in England in general. There's like Manger Le Pret, I think, Cafe Nero. There's a bunch, but I like Starbucks because I know that coffee doesn't like give me an upset stomach, so that's the one I usually get if I'm gonna be walking around, just because I know how I react to it. So I got, what did I get? I think I got the caramel waffle latte, or maybe I got one of the holiday drinks, and it was just a really nice like warm thing. It was a bit chilly and it was raining. And then from there I walked down to the Globe, which I am slowly getting over my dislike of Shakespeare. It's not that I dislike him, I dislike how there's so many people throughout history and literature that we've kind of latched on to this one figure. And I know he did a lot of like important things, and he changed how we view language and how we tell stories, but I don't know. I just like to be critical, I guess, for no reason. But I saw the Globe and I was like, this is so cool that I could stand here in the year 2021, drink my Starbucks coffee, and look at this building where Shakespeare was able to put on most of his plays and write, and I just really like that. And then I walked over the bridge I went towards like the shopping district because I wanted to see like the place that inspired J.K. Rowling to write Diagon Alley. But I saw a Christmas tree. I thought I got to go to like where J.K. Rowling was inspired by that. And then I went to the British Museum. So this is like one of those things when you think of London, you think of like the British Museum, and it's just kind of like one of those monumental kind of feats of human collections. And I was so excited when I walked in. I got to see the Rosetta Stone, which kind of changed how we understand ancient history and how we do translation, and I was really excited to see that. But also like seeing all of these statues and like archaeological items, it kind of reminded me about like how did they collect those items? Were they collected responsibly, or were they forcibly taken from the communities that they're from? Because they did have like a Marshall Islands collection. And when I was an undergraduate and I was taking like my capstone anthropology class, we talked about how the British Museum was petitioned by Native Hawaiians who wanted their ancestral bones and ceremonial items returned. And so we watched this documentary about how they came all the way over here and how they practiced their cultural rites kind of to bring peace and respect back to these items so they could bring them home where they could be properly laid to rest or within like the proper historical and cultural standards. And I thought that was really interesting. And when I was kind of walking around the museum, I'm like, how many of these items were stolen? How many of them were just taken? Because when they don't like some items aren't explained in the museum. It's just kind of like, oh, this item belonged to so and so, but how did it get here? It's just kind of like the question. And then from there I went to the London Library, which is this humongous library that has manuscripts like the Magna Carta, which I was really excited to see. It was just kind of like fulfilling all my anthropological and like English major like favorite things. And I got this sweater. It's so cheesy. It says all I want for Christmas is books, and that's like one of the only souvenirs. I think it's like that's actually the only souvenir I've gotten from England. I got a souvenir in the UK, which is just a tote bag from a bookstore, but I don't really buy souvenirs in the typical sense. So that sweater, it's kind of an ugly Christmas sweater, but I just thought that'd be nice for like the holidays coming up. It is going to be cold when I'm in Sweden, and just kind of like a nice souvenir that I can actually wear, even though it is kind of ugly colors. It's very Christmassy. And then from there, I went to Baker Street because of Sherlock Holmes, and it was quite rainy. There's someone in the doorway not letting anybody in, and I'm just like, okay, at least I saw it. And it's more like a music, like you can't really go into it. It's more of a store. So I thought that was kind of interesting. A lot of like the things that we think of like tourist spots just get turned into gift shops, which, you know, good for them. After my long day in London, I was like, okay, it's time to head home. And so I caught the train back home, and that was that day in London. And then now that I am in Hayes and Harlington, different part of London, I could like explore. This is the west side of London. I was on the east side of London before, so I could explore things kind of on this side. So I ended up going to IKEA because I'm like, I haven't been to IKEA in a while, and I was like, oh, that's kind of funny. So I kind of got to walk around, look at all the displays. I got Swedish meatballs, which is always good. And then on one of my other days in London, just the past, I think it was 2 days ago, I walked through Kensington Gardens. I saw the palace. I got to go to the Museum of Natural History, which I kind of forgot. Like, natural history is more geology, fossils, but it's like the volcanoes and earthquake parts always kind of triggers me a bit. So I was kind of like rushing through there, and I got lunch. I got chicken and potato wedges. They literally gave me half a chicken. I was like, that's so much. But then I'm like, oh wait, this was very expensive. So it was okay in the end. But I got to see the Natural History Museum, and the architecture in like the main hall was just amazing. I was just kind of like, this is cooler than everything else. And I was like, you should look at that. And then they had this really cool exhibit on climate change and kind of how our own human actions are affecting the environment. And I thought that was a really good exhibit, because a lot of times you hear about how our actions are affecting the environment, but kind of getting to see the statistics, like plain on the wall, was really refreshing. And then they had this like cute carousel and ice skating rink outside, and yeah, that was outside the Natural History Museum. I was in there for a while, and then once I came out, I caught the subway, and I just subway train back to here, which that was like my second full day in London. That's kind of like the touristy things I've done in London. I know a lot of my time is kind of spent just doing normal things. I realized that I'm the same person everywhere I go, and that's not going to change. And so I pick days and I do the things that I want to do, not just the things I think I have to. And so I could just not feel guilty about how I spend my time, because I do feel guilty about, oh, I'm here in England, in London, I should be going out every day and enjoying it. But I don't have that kind of social battery. Like in the Natural History Museum, I was kind of freaked out from the volcano things, because you kind of go up this escalator through like this bright red globe of the earth, and I was like, oh, this is pretty cool. And then it kind of freaked me out the rest of the time I was there, which that's on me. Yeah, but thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you have a nice week, and I'll talk to you later. Bye.